So, good morning. Today is lesson 7 for Friday, and we are going to do just a quick review video about introductions before you write a full introduction, and then critique a couple other of classmates' introductions. So, what are the components of an introduction? You need a hook or attention getter. Right now, we're practicing using personal anecdotes at the beginning of an introduction. You can also, once we start doing research to add to our essays, you can research anecdotes. There are lots of other ways to hook people in and interest them in your introduction. This is just one way that we're practicing right now. You also need any necessary background or that will allow you to establish the issue, connect it to your reader, connect to the overall problem, and you need a thesis statement that states a position on the subject. Typically, the thesis statement is going to be the last sentence in your introduction. Sometimes writers will take the closed thesis and kind of break it up into two sentences where maybe they have one sentence that states the position and another sentence that actually lists the points. And that's also an option, but those sentences would go at the end of the introduction. So think about the introduction being almost like the shape of a funnel that you're kind of starting a little bit more broad with this interesting information and starting to get more and more specific until you get to the thesis. And the other thing that you need throughout the introduction are transitions to connect all the ideas. Usually, whenever we start talking about introductions and I talk about how to make your introduction more interesting and adding these elements, there are a lot of times when you'll see students write the introductions without any transitions. So then it feels like you have this maybe like a little anecdote, and then you have some background, and then you have a thesis, but they don't feel like connected elements. And that might be through just using transitional words. It might also be by using sentences that provide a transition that connect one idea to another. So you are also going to be graded for today's assignment on the feedback that you provide for other students. And all of this will be anonymous today. We're using a platform called Parlay Ideas. And so no one knows that you're writing or necessarily knows that you're commenting, but I'll know whenever I'm doing the grading. So I think, first of all, you want to be really specific as you possibly can be, and you want to be constructive. So that just means you want to give the person that you're commenting on actionable feedback so that they can actually make a specific change to the writing to make it better. So here's a weak example. So if I read a paragraph and I just said add transitions, a stronger way to provide feedback, especially when you're providing feedback for a classmate. I think you can be, you're only looking at maybe one or two paragraphs, so you can be really, really helpful. A better example would be there needs to be a transition between the anecdote you provide in the story and the rest of the paragraph. Can you add a sentence that connects the anecdote to the broader topic? I think asking questions and feedback is a good idea. I think that you always want to remember that it is the other students writing and they get to make choices, and those choices might not be the choices that you suggest. I think we want to be careful of our tone in our feedback. I think that some students are so worried about tone and feedback that what they end up doing is saying a lot of nice things that aren't particularly helpful. So they say things like, I love it, good position, good this, good that. And, while that is nice, and maybe you do read an introduction as part of your lesson today that you think it's perfect, I can't think of anything that they could do differently. Even in your praise for that, I think you want to be as specific as possible. You could say, I like it when you did X. Or if you're giving some kind of criticism, you say, can you do this? Or when I was reading this, it felt confusing to me here because I didn't understand this and this. Really trying to explain yourself and be specific so that it's not about whether or not you think the introduction is good or bad. It's just about, oh, I like this component, or, oh, I think this component could be better. I think that that is a way to provide feedback without having to worry so much about specifically hurting somebody's feelings or, being overly critical. And then as far as reading the feedback that you get, I think that, we all can get feedback on our writing. I mean, if I were taking a class right now, I'd get feedback on my writing. People who are professional writers and make a living as writers get feedback on their writing. So I think that the ability to see what somebody else has to say about what you've written, even if you choose not to take their suggestion, and then to take that in and kind of see their point of view on it and think about it is a really valuable thing to be able to do, and also a really good way to improve, because I think that sometimes we're so in the middle of something that we've written that we can't really think through how it could be better. So that's today's lesson. Everything is linked on Parlay Ideas, including a link to some transition words and things like that. I'm also giving you an additional prompt. Oh, and one last thing. So on the Edpuzzle activity that we did last week, I'm in the process. I actually haven't looked at all of them yet. I'm recording this on Thursday afternoon, but by the time I leave today, I should have commented on everything. You can go back to your Edpuzzle, and I'm actually not awarding points for last Friday's Edpuzzle. I'm going to be using it to take attendance for last Friday. So those of you who haven't done that might take that into account. But on that Edpuzzle, I did make comments. So I made comments both on your feedback that you provided as well as the anecdote that you provided at the end. And so you might consider some of those comments whenever you're doing today's lesson. It should be helpful to you. So you can go back and look at that. So thanks. Have a good day. Let me know if you have any questions.